Welcome to this session of Proving Data Strategies. This is a web series brought to you by Asterisk Intelligence, and we've designed it to prove the value that data can bring to your credit union. If you'd like to watch other webinars in this series, we've posted recordings at study.cuanswers.com. So my name is Annalyn Hawks. I'm a business intelligence analyst with CU Answers, and the focus of today's session is analyzing membership growth and composition data. So we'll spend some time talking about a few definitions to get started and a list of some tools. I want to get into the tools, some strategies for using them, and different tactics that I recommend. But we'll start with some simple concepts, simple ways to find basic membership growth trends, and then we'll continue into a few more advanced strategies from there. The first question to ask ourselves is, what is the meaning of life? Now, it's not quite that bad, but we do need to ask ourselves, how are we going to count members? A lot of times I get asked this question from a person who's already attempted to count members and is kind of learning that it's not as simple as it looks. We may not get the same number out of two different tools. We may not have the same definition by two different departments in a single credit union, right? So I want to talk about just different ways that people have put toward thinking about this and how CU Answers as the core has configured tools and sort of established its common decision of how to count a membership across the system. But when you boil it all down to the data, instead of the philosophy and the idea of what is a member, who is the relationship with, where's the, once we move beyond some of those thoughts and really say what data do we have, the answers are that we have a membership that more than one person could be a part of, more than one individual people could be a part of, whether it's an individual membership as a personal membership or an organizational membership, right? So anyway, there's this entity, if you will, that is a membership. And that membership is the relationship with your credit union. And there might be multiple individuals who are part of that relationship as a membership. And it gets even a little bit more tricky when we realize that one person could have more than one membership with you. Okay, so for whatever reason they want more than one account, or because of your products you require them to open a second account, maybe for an HSA or something, second membership I should say. So there is this kind of tricky mix where we've got a membership that can have more than one person on it, or we have one person who can have more than one membership. And we're lucky it doesn't divert into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other angles, but that's the basic situation we find ourselves in, is that we've got these two definitions of a membership and an individual, a person, represented by a social security number or a tax ID number if we're talking about a business. And keep in mind, on those business memberships, then you have the owners, the social security numbers of the owners that are going to represent the individual person. Okay, so a membership is at its base, no pun intended here, really simple. It's just the account base, the account number, that membership number that you have established for that membership relationship. And that membership is going to have a primary owner and a secondary, anybody else will be a secondary owner, so a joint owner, right? So, and I'm not talking beneficiaries or miscellaneous owners, depending on what their qualifications are at this point, but an account base is an account base. That's a member as a membership relationship, okay? Then different individuals, different social security numbers will have the roles of a primary member or a joint owner. Now, there is some details on the screen here. For those of you who are maybe you've taken the notes on it already, we keep the primary owner's social security number in the master table, and we keep the secondary owner's social security numbers or tax ID numbers in either one of these cases in a data table called the sec names table. Now we're not going to get into query in today's session at all, but those are two key data table names that if you're ever interested at all in attempting to build queries that look at memberships and the people who are on them, then those are two table names you're going to need to pull up and kind of connect together and evaluate. Okay, so I want to point those out. And the master table, it is going to hold one row for each account base. So each account base that's open with you today, and by open I mean active in any capacity, literally any capacity at all, even if you don't consider that membership to be in good standing. The master table holds all the account bases. And that's, I mean, I'm going to get ahead of myself for a second here, but that's the basic definition and understanding of a member that the core uses. So when you're using tools in CUBASE, what it's doing is it's counting those account base records. How many membership account bases do you have? And that's the number that we're doing some of the engagement statistics off. That's the number that we're going to show you when we calculate the number of members that you have in certain tools. Now, there's one other factor we're going to need to get to in a second that'll impact how the core counts memberships, but I'll put that off for the moment. The next questions I get are, well, how can I find the active members? I only consider a true member to be someone who is active with me. And the answer to that question is, well, how do you define active? Or another way to put that is I only want the members who are in good standing. I've heard some credit unions go so far as to tell me there's a membership account that we have pulled up and we're looking at on the screen together as an open membership, and they're telling me this guy's not a member, he's a closed member. I get that. I understand that, he's not a person that you are continuing a relationship with, but as far as the system is concerned, this is not a closed member if it's able to be pulled up in teller or a phone operator. That's an active membership that in order for you to treat as a closed member, you would have had to do some creative things to suppress statements and a few other things, right, to actually set up the account so that nothing is happening with it, right? So, that's getting down to a new level of complexity, but at a basic level, in the core anyway, you're going to see an active member defined as any member that doesn't have a written off loan. If a membership does have a written off loan on it, it will occasionally be just suppressed from the count, or there will be some type of toggle or a box that you can use, a checkbox you can use to turn on or off the inclusion of memberships with written off loans in the member count. Now, in CUBASE, in the core, there's not really there's a member in good standing kind of feature, if you will, but the criteria is going to vary for every single one of you, and you know best what that will be. And even if you're not using that specific feature, you have typically some idea of what it means to be a member in good standing. So maybe that means you're not delinquent on a loan. Maybe that means you are active with your accounts. You're not dormant. So there's a lot of different angles that in good standing concept could cover. And, the diversion of paths is so really, the scope is wide as far as that's concerned. So a lot of the core tools don't take that into consideration, but you certainly can if you're trying to build some queries or if you are trying to produce some marketing lists based on some of those specific sort of activity or positive factors that you're looking for on a membership. So we spent a little more time than I intended to kind of talking through these concepts and this idea of really, taking the philosophy and translating it to the data. And then the data is the account bases and the social security numbers. Okay, so we use words like a membership or a person, but when we're talking about the data, those are the terms that we the terms and the data fields that we're actually working with. Okay, so someone has to actually understand these differences and be able to either set a definition or help, the department that's asking for this information to verbalize or express what their end goal is so that it can be translated to the system and to find a member count. Now, I realize, the more I talk about this, the more and more complicated it sounds to find a count of your membership. And honestly, it is pretty simple if we're going to take the, one of two paths. We're going to say, are we going to count memberships are we going to look for account bases, or are we going to look for the social security numbers of those primary owners? If we're looking for just social security numbers, then we're saying, I'm going to count you as a member one time, even if you have more than one membership with me. If you've gone wild and opened up 3 to 4 of them, I still only want to count you once. And so one of those two paths, and there's a really nice tool that we're going to look at that will show you the answer to both of those paths in one place a little later on. But as easily as it can be boiled down to one of two paths, it's just as easy to broaden it out and say, well, we could take it any one of these different directions, right? So we got to rein that in a little bit and help people see it really can be that simple, but also understand that every department can have a legitimately different need for finding a certain number of members. And those needs may dictate different definitions and understanding of whether or not memberships with written off loans are included, or whether or not dormant members are included, etc. So it just takes some conversation to figure that out from some people who are aware of the different potentials, and then knowing where to go to the tools in the system or the data tables in the system to translate that. Now, there is an article that my boss, Keegan Daniel, has written on this very question. How many members does my credit union have? Is the base question that he has written to kind of expand even a little further into some of those different philosophies that are out there, say the householding method and a few other things. So if you're interested, there's the URL here on the screen, just qsomag.com as well. If you search out this question, how many members does my credit union have, that article will pop right up. That's worth taking a look if you have some interest in just reading some more on what some asterisk intelligence folks have to say about that topic. And as I said earlier, I kind of got a little bit ahead of myself when I talked about how the core counts a member, but we'll summarize it again for you here. There are those two ways that CU Answers tools count a member. And it's not the two paths I laid out earlier, although that one tool does give you the count by social, as well as a count by account base, right? So the two really methodologies that we use in our tools is that we're going to count any membership that is an account base in master, and that's a master data table, meaning it's an open membership. There might be nothing on there, and they might have just the 000 and nothing else, and that's all they've had forever, but they still count as a membership. And honestly, that does include written off loans, unless the tool has been actively designed to suppress them by default. And even in that case, you'll have a way to reverse that in most tools. Okay, so the second way that CU Answers counts a member is the way that we bill you for members. And that is by what we call the active memberships, meaning it's the same logic of we're going to count up every account base or every membership relationship that you have. Again, regardless of kind of how many individuals, how many different social security numbers might be on those memberships. We're counting up those membership relationships, and then we'll subtract the ones that do have written off loans. And again, that's the same way we bill you. We don't bill you for memberships with written off loans. But when you open a tool, you're going to see one or the other number typically. And that answer this difference by far is the most common reason or answer when I have folks coming to me saying, how come these two tools both show me a count of members, have a totally different number in them? And the answer, again, 90% of the time or more, is just that written off loan factor. One of them is suppressing them, the other doesn't. Sometimes it's also a dashboard that has other reasons it's suppressing memberships based on the purpose for the analysis, and then we talk about that at that time as well. But that's project specific and topically specific usually. But at its base, we have these two ways of counting members in the system, and that is why you might see two different numbers depending on what tool you're using. Now, logically, you already understand. Anytime there's a larger number and a smaller number, then now that you know there's only these two ways we count a member, it is safe to assume that the larger number is that raw basic count of every account base in the system that's an open account base. And then the smaller number is the slightly more refined, say, scrubbed of written off loans. But then, again, we could make this as easy or as complicated as we want to make it. And toward the complicated angle, we could be talking to the marketing department, and they're telling you they need members in good standing and contactable, right? So now, of course, we need the marketing department to help us help them by saying, what does in good standing mean to you? Is this dormant members? Maybe should we get rid of members who are noted as deceased? Not that the membership itself is in poor quality, they're delinquent or past due on everything, but is that a person you want to be reaching out to with new offers at this time, depending on what the offer is? Then switch gears a little bit and go think about the idea of what your bylaws require and dictate for eligibility to vote for your board. So your bylaws might define a member as any individual person who has a relationship with you, whether it's together with anyone else on under one membership or not. So now that particular purpose is going to have its own definition, and neither one is wrong. When you go to a tool and you say, how many members do I have? And it says 5,680, but that's not the right number for your vote eligibility count. That doesn't mean the 5,680 number is wrong. It just means it's, not designed. It's not, the logic is not built towards your purpose. We need to find something that is built towards your purpose. So we just adjust accordingly. All right, now let's get into looking at some of the tools that we will be taking a look at today. Now, just a quick tip, if you like to kind of have these tool numbers to follow along with as we go. Again, I always show them to you as we look in tools, but take a quick screenshot of this slide, and then of course, yes, once this recording is posted, the slide deck will get posted as well, so you'll be able to find this list easily later on as well. But yeah, the first two tools I want to start us in is this idea of looking at a membership analysis report, tool 520, and then a membership summary comparison, 525. These are two really stripped down tools that are just going to get us basics on your member count. And it covers both of these two ways that the system counts a member. Then we'll go into a few of these other tools that are specifically related at looking at new memberships, closed memberships, and just all memberships in general. And, at that time, we'll talk a little bit more about what it means to be looking at the net membership versus just who's coming in as a new member. And then a little bit of those details now about how long these members are staying with you and what the ages are of these members. A breakdown on gender codes and what their service and product engagement is. And that's the next couple groupings of tools here. Now, one thing that people don't often enough think about, I think, or at least not in the conversations I have, and I might not be talking to the right people on this topic, but, looking at people who are you're losing relationships with, who are closing their memberships, is definitely something that is valuable in my opinion. And tool 132, called Losing the Love, or member behavior patterns, is helpful for that as well. And then as we have time, if we can fit them in, I'll wrap it up with Tool 232 for common bonds and Analytics Booth, a couple of cool trends. And alerts are emails you can get delivered to you on your net membership movement. All right, let's get moved over here. One moment. Here is Tool 520, the Membership Analysis Report. And the headlining piece of information that is relevant to you guys, I think, about this report is that this one and the next one I'm about to show you, the Membership Summary Comparison, which is a sister tool to this one, is designed with the exact same logic that we use for billing. So on your monthly invoice, when you get that count of the number of members you've been billed for by CU Answers, it's going to reconcile to this report. This is the report that goes and pulls out the cleanest count that, again, matches up to that billing process. As I mentioned earlier, there's other, say, dashboards and such that will have different tendencies to either include or exclude the written off loans, or possibly even have other reasons members are excluded based on the purpose of the analysis. That's most often seen in dashboards, because dashboards, being for analysis, are a little bit more fluid in interpretation and not necessarily always designed to perfectly reconcile to your billable member count or to that precise, account base record count of how many memberships you have. But this report right here is stop number one if you are looking for one of those simple lists that you can print out and maybe include in a board report or something that is going to line up with that invoice. Now, pretty simple settings inside this tool. Just choose current month, or you can run this for prior months as well. But usually the point of interest is most current month. Includes all accounts. If you wanted to, you could also go ahead and choose active closed or new. But I don't typically recommend, this is a perfectly capable and functional tool, but I find a lot of people going into a different one we'll look at later called the New, Closed, and All Memberships Dashboard, Tool 553. Now, notice the most important thing is this report is automatically reporting written off loans separately. There is the option to include written off loans in totals, and most folks do generally want that separate breakdown of the information, so I don't see a lot of people changing this. Now, quite simply, if we were to run this tool, all it does, and I just hit enter, all it does is it produces my report. I've got a job completed, and it's now, for me, in my spool files, but for you probably printing out to a piece of paper somewhere. Now, obviously, that is a workable report. Okay, here it is. Basically, we've got the number of members is broken down by how many are individual versus organizational, and this is the memberships count. This is so for this credit union, there's 8,250 memberships in total, and this is having excluded the written off loans. We're reporting those separately. Now, we also get the number, a slightly lower number, that there's 7,710 total individuals, people that are primary members on these memberships by Social Security number. Now, if you're looking to also include joint owners, we'll have to send you somewhere else. That's an additional level of complexity that for a base member count is not usually something that's included, but is perfectly fine to include. We'll just have to handle that separately. But when we were talking about social or tax ID numbers and scrubbing out extra memberships that one single person might have, we actually narrowed down the sort of primary relationship count to about 7,700 for this credit union. Now there's all this extra information, like what is the total savings balance, average share balance, deposit balance, I should say, across these two groups, and average total lending balance, loan balance. Now, as we go down a little bit, there's more information on the gender code breakdowns, including the other code you might use per member's choice, or the organizational counts will have that one in place, depending on how what your policies are for setting those up and what they're defined as on the membership. And then an age breakdown that counts the number of members in each age group. And now we're starting to look at what that number of memberships with written off loans is, 540. So this is, again, we're reporting them separately. So this is 540 memberships in addition to the memberships that are counted in the top part of this report. All right, let's back up and get into Tool 525. That was the report. If you're using the report today, you may want to entirely transition to Tool 525 for just data review or data presentation. But 520 will still have a lot of good value for, again, just having something you can throw in a board packet, if that would be helpful. But when we get into 525, we actually get the ability to compare 2 months against each other. And you can, if you've been on the core long enough, even say do an annual, go to July 2019. Oops. It only needs a 2-digit year, so let me get that correct. Okay, so if we leave it at all active loans, again, the core definition of the core definition of an active member is those memberships without a written off loan. And as we move forward, we get to see some of these numbers for what the July versus June numbers were. Now in the report, a second ago, the report tool, we were looking at August. So these don't line up to August because we're going back even further to July. But this is July 2019, and we have 8,047 members as individual members, 142 organizational, and then grand total 8189 a year ago. Now, most recent July month, 8232 for a net positive of 43, which is after that decline of 2 in the organizational bucket and then net gain of 45 in the individual bucket. So yeah, there's a quick gathering of the facts here on these member counts. And this is minus the written off loans. Now, how do we see that different angle, the memberships by social security numbers, so the more of a unique look? And that's just another tab up here. We can tab right over to this. Yeah, so here's those numbers. And if this is your policy of just when you're taught as individually in your credit union, when you talk about how many members you have, you're generally going by the social security numbers, then this is the number you can pull from. So take your choice. Either one of these is going to be a valid result for you. Now there's a little bit more information. Say we can go into the savings and loans numbers just like we could on Tool 520. In the report, we're just getting to see them on the screen here and get that comparative calculation from one month to another month, in this case over an annual. Now the continue button will take us through some of that other stuff we again did also see on that other report, so the gender code breakdown and what those member counts are. As we continue forward, there's the age segment breakdown. Now this is looking at the total membership. How many members are in each of these age segments. And so, quick answers to which age segments are growing. You know, as when all is said and done, as you've gained new members and lost some members, at the end of the day, do you have more in this group or less in this group? And keep in mind, there's some factors involved such as aging in or out, right? So a 22-year-old who's about to have a birthday and turn 23 is going to be impacting this category, especially when we're looking from July 2019 all the way to 2020. There's been birthdays happening that entire year. So your existing membership shuffling through the age groups is going to impact these numbers just a little bit as well. Just something to keep in mind as you're talking about this data and helping people understand it and really getting a grasp on it yourself. Okay. Now, that's it. You know, that's the end of what we saw in the report, and this is what we also can grab out of Tool 525, the membership summary comparison. So real simple stuff, but real helpful stuff that is kind of honestly difficult to get on your own if you're trying to, say, build a custom query. These tools can give it right to you on the screens. We don't need to make it too complicated on ourselves. All right, so next up, let's check out tool 553. And we've had a lot of trainings on this tool, so it will be a relatively light look. As you can see, it's already preparing us to be able to see a list of members right on the screen. So far, we've not seen a list of specific member account bases anywhere. You know, that's what we're going to get as soon as we queue up these filters. Now, if I want to look at kind of new members last month, we'll say July of 2020. Simple to put the date ranges in here. Okay, and this status drop down is extremely relevant and extremely important. So it's defaulted to opened, which means it's telling this date filter to look for any memberships that were opened in the month of July. Okay, so if I hit enter, we get 46 memberships that have been opened in the month of July. Now, as soon as I don't have any examples of it to show you, but you'll notice that if any of those memberships that were opened in July, so real recent openings, had also closed already for some reason, and those reasons, of course, can vary, but if it had also closed, we would see that close date, and it would count it up here. So we're able to look at, you know, retention rates, basic retention rates of our new memberships last quarter. How many have we kept? And how many are still with us? And ideally, you know, hopefully none of you are going to come check this number. Maybe say put it out to January 2020. And hopefully none of you are going to see that this retention rate is some horrible number. This credit union, 4%, 4.2% closed. That's really not too bad. But yeah, I mean, hopefully you're not seeing that all your gains are just getting lost in the next couple of months as you gain new members. But this is something to just point out as well. Okay, so as soon as we flip this status column to closed, this is not going to just say, okay, now out of all these new members, tell me just those 14 that closed. This is going to totally change the logic of this date filter. Now, let me go back to just narrowing it down to July. Now it's saying, give me any membership that closed in the month of July, irregardless of when they opened their membership. Totally ignore when they opened their membership and just tell me how many left me. All right, so when we turn that filter on, this credit union did lose 99 members in the month of July. But you can see those open dates range. I mean, let's sort the column. Just click that here. So this long-standing member from 1991, 92, et cetera, these ones have left the credit union, again with close dates in July. All the way up to, let's see, somebody who just opened their membership in March and now has left you by July 6th. But generally, I mean, these members have been with you for a couple years, most of them, at least. Well, the part that really hurts, and who knows the reason, is some of these members who've been with you maybe more than 10 years, and now this membership has closed, and they've left their relationship with you at the credit union. Before we leave the tool, though, I want to show you, I have flipped back to the people who've opened their memberships with you, and I want to go to the analysis option. And I'm going to leave it anchored. Well, let's go to end of month files because I did pick last month just to sync up our time slices here. And this analysis feature gives you 5 different screens of just kind of who these members are. So figuring out what their ages are, where they're from, what their addresses are. I mean, not the full address, but based on zip codes, we see what the most popular days of the month were, that they would come in, and of the week, I'm sorry, that they have come in and opened their membership. And Thursday, for whatever reason, was the top day, busiest day of the week for people at the credit union who were opening memberships. the gender breakdown, individuals versus organizational, and with specifics on what type of organizational account. This one was a trust. There's the zip code breakdown. Where are they all coming from? What are their primary addresses? What employees are opening the most accounts? What branches are all these members getting assigned to? And we're moving forward pretty quickly. And there's data tables behind every one of those charts as well. And simple stats like how many of these members did we get an email address on? How many have opened a checking account? How many do have an ATM or debit card ordered? How many are enrolled in e-statements? How many have used online banking so far? So, obviously the value of looking at and understanding the engagement rates and retention rates of new members is helpful, and this is one of my favorite places to come do that. Analysis 5 of 5, of course, gives us some more information on the types of accounts they've opened. I tell you, this top one is my favorite. If I click on it, we can see, well, that's not the data table I want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle to the data view. There we go. We can see the number of active accounts in each category that these new members have, so loans and checking, and then the active average balance across all of these types of accounts as well. So some pretty large certificates came in from this group, for example, in July. And we've certainly got a larger average savings balance than we do a checking balance on this group. And 11 loans for an average balance of $11,000 on those loans from the new members that are coming into you. Now, this is one of those reports that I do have people ask for quite often, where they're saying, okay, so I got new members, but are they doing stuff? Like, did they actually bring new business to me, new potential interest income? And specifically, I want to know what those stats are for the new members, not just existing members who did open new loans. So yes, that's potential interest income. So hopefully you can see the potential here, and it would just be a quick screenshot, or these VAT elements where you can click on an image or do a visualization, as we saw the charts a second ago. So this option to just copy the data off the screen is available as well. Okay, so we'll leave the analysis angle of tool 553, and we'll dive into a new tool, the next tool really, 752. The relationship analysis tool is taking some different angles, looking at now age and those gender codes. So this is the first place I come whenever I want to answer the question, what's the average age of my membership? Now, unlike the previous tool, there's no date filters. We can't say only show me new members. This is now looking at your membership as a whole. And I have had this, I've explained this tool and had credit unions using this tool quite often when they're evaluating potentially new credit union goals for the next business year, or evaluating their success rates at a existing business goal, let's say growing their membership representation in certain age groups. Because this is highly customizable. We can actually change the age groups in the bottom left. Okay, so we could set these up to any age groups we'd like. And if you're specifically focused on the age group of 18 to 25 maybe, then that's something you certainly could set up if you like. Now, let's see, where do I want to take you next? I think that's actually just about, up in the upper left, notice this is automatically including members with a written off loan. So that's why we see this at quite a larger number than we saw in the other tool. And I apologize, I do forget the exact number, but I think it was 8,200 some odd members for the month of July for this credit union. So not much higher for today, as of today. And now we all of a sudden see almost 8,800. We have 8,790. And That is perfectly explainable because we are including members with written off loans. As soon as we uncheck that box and hit enter, crunching the numbers, we're down to 8250, which I don't think either exactly reconciles with the tool. But again, we've got August, and then that other tool we had end of month July, so they shouldn't exactly reconcile there either. But this is very close. This is for analysis purposes. This is perfect. This is identical to what we need. All right. Oh, I never even really pointed out the question, but the average age, this credit union's average age for across all memberships is 50 years old. All right, let's back up, head into the next tool. Talk member retention. Okay, so there is two separate tools that are, again, we've had a lot of pairs of tools, and these are a couple of pairs that look at member retention by age group or by the year, so sort of a class of mentality that the membership was opened. So I always like to look at year opened. I'm going to use this one and just know that these two tools are very similar. I'm probably not going to open tool 508, but I'll use 509 to open it up, and let's take a look. So these are all the different classes. So the graduating classes, if you will, of 08, 09, 10. This is all the groupings of members who opened an account with you in this year. So 498 new members opened in 2010. Then by a year later, 455 were still members with you, so a 91% retention rate. Then, and we're just focusing on 2010 for now. By 2 years later, 422 are still around for an 85% retention rate. Then down to 79, 71, and kind of tanking to 62, then 54 by 6 years later. Now, is there any one particular class that's doing really great 6 years later? I mean, honestly, overall, it seems like the credit union kind of dipped as far as being successful at keeping members up to 6 years, but has recently been increasing, doing better at keeping members longer at the credit union, as by the most recent class we even know 6-year data for is 2014, and we're at a 60% retention rate, which is their highest across this entire 17-year time frame. Now, there's a lot of data for this credit union, but keep in mind that you will have whatever starting point you have for your transition point to this system, to the core. Okay, so if you converted in 2012, then that will be the point when I think you will have the most accurate data moving forward. You may see data because we can algorithmically calculate, of course, from when people's open dates are recorded, but I don't know that I would put a lot of stock by the older data if you're trying to use this dashboard. So we can control that. Let's say hypothetically this credit union converted in 12, and so we kind of want to ignore everything from 11 and older. What we can do is we can actually just use checkboxes to pick the years we're interested in, hit enter, and it focuses us right in on those. I also could have done that up here, but now we have, perhaps maybe this is a cleaner look that you prefer for pulling it out into Excel without all that extra stuff, or turning it into a PDF, and it recalculated what the overall retention rates are in across all these different classes, just in total for your credit union. How well have you been doing at keeping memberships at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 year marks? Awesome. So let's go ahead and get out of this one. Flip over to tool 840. The targeted tiered score analysis. Now this one isn't necessarily looking at new memberships either. This is now more about, say, member demographics and membership composition. So if we leave everything blank, it's just going to look at your entire membership, but we could pick on a certain group, say an age range of 18 to 35, or a credit score range of 540 to 630. Keep in mind, unless you use the soft pull programs to routinely update scores on all members, this may be a limiting option. But for now, I'll just pick on, let's say, 18 actually to 45. Choose an age group. Okay, so we can take this age group that we're interested in studying and take it into the tiered scoring analysis program, which you may or may not be using as an official feature that you're offering rewards points, and maybe you're not doing anything with the levels that members are getting scored into. So this first screen may not be extremely relevant to you, but even if you don't use this program, I always like to come in here to just quickly pull the number on average products per member and average services per member. So the average products per member is 1.9, almost two products per member for the selected group at for the essentially representing the month of July's information. We score everybody on the first of the month, so that's why the date at the top is August, because they got scored on August 1st, but the scoring is overall of July's activity and information. So then 3.1 services per member. Now, over just one column over, we have the whole entire membership, not just the little group we selected that's 18 to 45 years old, and the whole entire membership in total averages 2.2-ish, we'll call it, at products per member, and 3.1, we'll call it, services per member. So your 18 to 45-year-olds are slightly less they have slightly fewer amount of products, but a slightly higher amount of services that they're using with you. Now, that this is a piece of information that just makes you more knowledgeable about your credit union, but what's important is know what this number is and watch how it changes over time or with different populations. So we could easily just back right up, change these filters to the 70 and up age range and see how they change. And these goals, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll pick on goal 4 because that's usually people's favorite. We'll get it to the self-service page. And we start to be able to gather numbers on service engagement and product engagement, similar to how those analysis screens looked in the new, closed, and all memberships dashboard. We can see out of this group of 70-plus-year-olds, 29% of them are enrolled in e-statements, which maybe perhaps as expected is lower than your whole membership's measurement at 40%. Now, these percentages are calculated off that CORE's definition of your all members. All members is counted as all those membership records. If you are subtracting some members from your statistics, if you're tracking statistics externally out of the CORE, then the effect is that this 39% is potentially a little bit inflated, at least compared to your numbers. So keep that in mind when you're attempting to reconcile. If you have your own homegrown tracking process and are looking to compare the numbers to these tools, then take some time to get educated on the differences between your process and our tools to better understand their relationship to each other. But it's all consistently calculated the same inside this tool. So from a comparative standpoint, it is very relevant, even if you find yourself in that position. All right, let's check out the next tool. 132, losing the love, or member behavior patterns. So what a lot of people don't know is this is looking at memberships who've closed their accounts, but we can toggle it over to actually look for some of these things on open memberships as well. So if we want to see what memberships are open with me today, but are exhibiting some of the patterns that I think I've identified as leading to a membership leaving me, we actually can find those on existing members using this tool. Now, this tool is worthy of a whole class in and of itself, so I actually won't go any further than just this screen. And honestly, we do hold classes on this. I think Extend has a Losing the Love member communication program and performs demos and classes on this on this dashboard quite often. I believe a couple of which are recorded in our video libraries. So just think about that idea of looking at members who have closed and left you and translating what some of those patterns look like, behavior patterns look like, and just demographics, connections look like, and then try to find those same populations or those same patterns in your existing member base if you're more interested in this strategy of saying, let's work on really retaining the people who've been with me for a while. I don't want to lose a 13-year member. I think they're going to be a much stronger relationship than somebody who is perhaps just coming to me for the latest loan promotion. Not knocking the new business, new member acquisition off loan promotions at all, but just perhaps recognizing that there's potentially some additional or different flavors of benefit to focusing on your long-standing members who might be losing the love. Alrighty. Now, I don't think I want to take the time to go into common bonds for member group, but I'll tell you, it's quite similar to the analysis screens where we were able to see a zip code breakdown, we're able to see age segment breakdowns, we're able to see product and service engagement and the accounts that people have. It just requires that you have a file of members. Any member list you can find just as an export from a dashboard or through a query you've built. And if you plug in a file name, it runs that group of members through 4 analytical engines. We can evaluate account composition, we can evaluate membership traits, credit quality, or service engagement, which is really what this does is it feeds your file right into that tool we saw a second ago. Tool 840. Just to remind you what that was called, it just feeds it right into that targeted tiered score analysis where it tells you what the results are for the list that you have in your file. So that wraps up kind of running through the tools that we have in the core. I want to close with just a thought through, well, it's more than a thought. We'll close by actually opening up Analytics Booth and figure out how to send ourselves an email alert on net member growth for either just your whole membership, or if you're focusing on growing business relationships, you can get as specific as that if you'd like. So first of all, this whole next couple of processes is going to require that you be an Analytics Booth subscriber. So if you are not an Analytics Booth subscriber, you won't be able to log into this platform. We're not in the core anymore. We're just in the web through a web browser logged into Analytics Booth. And but for those of you who do have a subscription, you'll log in and see these 3 products. Dashboards, we can poke around in some dashboards that are up in the web space, trends, and alerts. Now, alerts is where we're going to go to set up emails for when certain benchmarks or numbers are reached on the membership growth trends. But let's just look at 1 or 2 through trends real quick. We're going to open this up and go to member data, expand this option, and let's just look at net members today. Now there's also closed and new and then just totals. Let's look at net members today and view the trend. When I say today, I mean literally on a daily basis. We feed data out to Analytics Booth every single day, and as I hover over each of these data points, you can see in the tooltip there's each of these days represented. June 30th, June 29th, and it's telling you what was the net impact on your membership on this given day. At the end of the day, when we measured a member count, how much lower or higher was it than the starting point of this graph? What's the starting point of this graph? May 20th. We can see that also right on the tooltip. So this is just the default settings. It's a 90-day look back, and we could change that to beginning of year, or we could change that to the beginning of the month, or anything we want, but the calculation is to the starting date of the graph. And since May 20th, as of at least June 25th, the net impact on membership was negative 11, minus 11. So I actually lost. But by the time we reached July 23rd, as activity kind of happened throughout the time in between, we have got ourselves at a net gain of two members, a plus 2. And I lied a second ago. We were at 11, a loss of 11. That was for that specific day, and the actual measurement since May 20th was a loss of 14 total membership, net total memberships. Okay, so obviously there's quite a big spike downward here where something happened. And look at that, it's in July. So I think this is proving that the numbers we saw back in the core for July were skewed much higher than they normally are. But just overall, this credit union still, at least in the last 90 days, is averaging a net loss by a small margin, just a little bit, 0.3 members really, but they are still averaging a net loss over the last 90 days. Now, there's a lot of options to play with in trends as far as kind of, graphing this data trend against another data point. We could graph this against the total membership and a whole bunch of other things. But I want to take us over to alerts and get us an idea of how to maybe get it. If this would be a point I would want to get an alert on as management. As soon as there's a day that has this large of a swing, and even this one, when we had a net effect of a loss of 11 members net across the memberships we opened that day versus closed that day, I want to know when something kind of that significant happens. So we'll set up an email alert to tell me, and let's close this out and get over to it. Okay. So to do that, it's got to be the alerts product in Analytics Booth. It's going to give me a couple options. I can either generate a new report email, and this is like everything, all the data about your credit union that we have in Analytics Booth gets sent to you on a frequency that you pick, or create a new custom alert. So this is what I want. I want to create a new alert, and I want to send an alert for the data point as I scroll down here. Down to member data, here we go. I wanted net members today. I want to know if it changes plus or minus 10. And again, this is for a daily count, the count that day. Plus or minus 10. If we have a swing of 10, a loss of 10 or a gain of 10 on any single day, let me know. And this is compared to a day ago. Now, we could also do compared to the 30-day average. If we're doing an average, keep in mind all those swings average out to a much lower number, so we might want to that will impact our threshold if I want to change it by that. Or, actually I could do if it if it increases by or decreases by any number, or if it reaches a certain threshold. Now, this reaches option is a one-time thing. If once it reaches that number, the alert goes inactive, and it's not like you continue to get alerts every single day, because now that it's reached it, it's gone above and it just constantly stays above there. So there are some dynamics to be aware of, but essentially I've got my alert. For net members today, I want to know if it changes by 10 on any given day compared to the day ago. I will save the alert, and it's going to send me an email every time that trigger criteria is met. Really, I think that wraps up what we wanted to look at today as far as the resources you have available and some of the tips and strategies for how to use them, and some of the kind of critical thinking and research-based thinking that we get into with this topic of looking at members and evaluating what it all means when we see a trend of a member count, or even just a member count in general. And using it to measure your membership growth or decline, unfortunately, as I know some of you are seeing out there. So thank you very much for spending time with me today. I hope to see you again in one of our other sessions on proving data strategies.